So going through the quiz of week of April 8, slightly different to the previous quizzes, slightly new format. Instead of looking at the different options we have, we are looking at the expected value.
Oh gosh. All right, I'm up for it.
So low jack opens to 2, high jack 3 bets, and now we're cut off. Got to consider whether or not we want to continue and what the expectation of continuing will be. So any thoughts? And it's not going to be like super ideal because in my in the preflop sim there isn't a cold calling range for imposition here, even though there probably should be. I think there is some for some 5-way. Yeah, there is a tad for 5-way where I've got hijack and then cut off, but I've had to remove that for the low jack, otherwise the tree gets too big. Anyway, assuming we're playing 4-bet or fold, what is the EV for continuing here in the cutoff?
So King 6 suited is a surprising 4-bet a lot of the time, but I think that's mainly when we've already been in there. So if we open and then get 3-bet, then you can 4-bet King 6 suited. I'm not sure it does so well just as a cold 4-bet, or at least not that well.
Yeah, so like King 6 suited is usually used because of its polarity property, so it's fairly polar 4-bet. Mm-hmm. Here, when we're looking to go for a cold 4-bet, we're going to be pretty merged.
Yeah, we don't need. Yeah, exactly. So we don't need to be polar when we're, we've got nothing committed, right? So I think that King 6 suited is a blunder, or very bad.
Okay.
Oh, let me be clear. I can just separate them into 2 categories right now. I think the 7-6 and King 6 are the mistaken blunder, and the King 10 and Queen Jack are the inaccuracy in different ones.
All right. Which one do you think is indifferent?
Probably Queen Jack.
Why do you think Queen Jack?
So the King 10 just gets dominated way more.
When we're going for a cold 4-bet, blockers are very important because you've got 2 players you're up against as well as the rest of the field. So
yeah. So the Queen Jack blocks both Queens and Jacks.
Queens and Jacks will probably fold against a cold 4-bet. We're thinking we'll fold somewhere now.
Yeah.
So like here, low jack, if low jack gets cold 4-bet by cutoff or something like that, they're going to be folding Queens and Jacks.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, the get it in range for low jack is like Kings plus and Ace King.
Ace King suited, yeah. Okay. So in that case, then King 10 is indifferent because they'll fold Queens Jacks, and at least you block the Kings plus the Kings and the Ace King. Okay, so then if that's the case, then maybe King 6 suited is inaccurate because you still block the King and the Queen Jack. You just don't block the Kings. You'd like to block Ace. You'd like to have Ace X and King X. And then 7-6 is the worst because you block none of it. I guess I'm totally off.
Yeah, so it's a combination of blocking and having really good equity. So 7-6 has got really good equity. These 2 hands, King 6 suited blocks small, like King 10, the reason why it's indifferent is because it blocks a lot. Queen Jack suited is actually the blunder.
Oh wow.
Because Queen Jack suited, it ends up just blocking folds. Doesn't really do much for us because we really want to block a king or an ace. Essentially, when we're bluffing. 7-6 suited has got the most equity out of all these hands. So here, this is the inaccuracy. 7-6 suited is the inaccuracy, and King 6 here is a mistake. So look at here. This is what the cold 4-bet range looks like. For the cutoff, button, small blind, big blind, they're all pretty similar. Jacks being different between 4-betting and not 4-betting. But here, a little bit of 6-5 for both. For basically in the cold 4-bet range. 7-6 there, loses 3% of a big blind, which is not a huge amount. King 10 being indifferent. Trying to get some folds from Jacks here. and the other Jack X hands.
So that's why you use
comfortable.
King 10 as opposed to King Jack suited and King Queen suited.
Yeah, so like if we look at
Is that right?
the hijacks range here, it's got like a fair bit more Jack X in it. The suited jacks, which will all fold. So like even jacks will fold half the time. So using King 10 is nice because we end up we don't block as many folds, right?
Yeah.
So King Jack will block folds. Alright, so this is what the continuing ranges looks like against a cold 4-bet. For the remaining clear players, it's basically going to be Kings plus and Ace King suited with a little bit of Ace King offsuit and Queens. Same for the low jack. Low jack's basically just continuing with Kings plus and Ace King. A little bit of Queens, so Queens and Jacks will fold. So having Queen Jack is not so good because it ends up blocking folds from the low jack.
Some reason a little bit of 6-5 suited.
Yeah, 6-5 suited ends up having like really good equity against hands like Aces and Kings.
Yeah.
So like it usually stays in there just for like a min. So against you, like you're gonna be fighting Aces and Kings a lot because jabbing yourself doesn't make too much sense. Because against a min continue like this is your continuing range against the min, and if you're in position, that's against min, that's against 3/4 pot. Depends how much is already committed, but like when the ranges get super tight, the presence of a 5-bet range kind of disappears. So this would be a 6-bet range. So this is not really much of a 6-bet range. Yeah, so this is a continuing range of like Queen Jack and Queen 10. The reason why those are in is because like they have a pretty low frequency to start off with, and they don't get dominated by Ace King, so that's why they like to be put in there a little bit. Compared to like Ace Jack, Ace 10, King Jack, King 10 get really dominated by an Ace King heavy range, which is what you've got, or Ace King and Ace Queen heavy. Alright. So this next one. So logic opens 2 calls, now it's us in the big blind. So either continue with each of the following hands. So logic opens to 2, you get calls from the cutoff and the button. Small blind folds, and then it's on us.
All right, so 6-5 off doesn't seem too good.
Which one do you think is the worst?
6-5 offsuit or Ace 10 offsuit.
Why do you think 6-5 offsuit is the worst?
So it's unsuited, and then you block like a lot of the button stuff, like the button cutoff calls might like 6s and 5s. You can't hit. You have no like equity from a flush. Just not a very good hand. Yeah. I'd much rather continue with a hand like A6 suited, which can hit the nuts multi-way. So I think A6 suited is indifferent.
6-5 can hit the nuts as well.
Oh, because of the straight?
So you can hit the nuts. I mean, but all these 3 hands can basically make the nuts pretty easily. I mean, A6 can make the nut flush. It can make a straight. It's can make a straight or a flush. It's can make a straight with 2 cards. I mean, this one can make a straight with 2 cards, but which one do you think is the worst EV? Like when you think about EV to continue here, we're going to be thinking about its valor, and multi-way valor is going to be a bit different. So yeah, multi-way valor. So because there's going to be 4 players, we're going to be thinking about the expected hand strength to the power of 4.
Right. So I think A6 suited is your best hand, so it's indifferent in a multi-way pot. Because you can flush over flush. Like it's the supreme nuts. Like when the other guys could have good hands.
Yeah, I mean, how often do you make a flush?
6%.
Yeah, by the time you get to the river. And how often do you make a flush draw on the flop?
Oh, you make a flush draw on the flop?
Flush draw, yeah. Because what's really going to happen is you're going to have flush draw or backdoor flush draw. Backdoor flush draw happens like a third of the time. Flush draw is going to happen something like 11% of the time.
20%? How much, sorry?
Something like 11% of the time, 11 to 12% of the time. You hit a flush draw off almost as often as you hit a set. Heavily multi-way when you're out of position, having a flush draw isn't quite as strong as heads up. And you're gonna hit a straight more often than you will a flush with, let's say 6-5. 6-5 hits a straight more often than a 6 hits a flush. That's pretty obvious.
Okay.
Is that a bird?
Well, like I'm just saying, like if you hit a straight with 6-5, like it comes fourth reduced. You're not really getting.
Alright, so Ace-10 here is the blunder.
Okay.
So like multi-way out of position against 3 players, it just doesn't make any sense.
Because you.
Yeah, I mean theoretically by calling, the most you could lose is 1 big blind. Right, and if you're losing more than half a big blind, like it's horrible. Like Ace-10, like what flops are you happy with? If it's an ace high flop, you're not super happy, or the hand isn't very strong, because like we're thinking about in terms of value, it's going to be expected hand strength to a power of 4 with 4 players.
Ace-10.
Yeah, how does that happen? 1 in 1,000. So like, yeah, I mean you're gonna flop about 1 in 1,000. So that's pretty much the only flop you're super happy with. Some 2-pair flops are going to be okay. Ace-10, you're going to make top 2-pair. But even that's multi-way, you're going to get set of a set a little bit, or you're going to lose to a set a little bit of the time. So happens Ace-10 flop 2-pair around 5% of the time, does it? So yeah, not super happy with Ace-10 when you make a 1-pair hand, and when you make a 2-pair hand, I mean it's good, but it's not like the nuts. Compared to if you've got a pocket pair, you flop a set. It's much easier to flop a set than with a pocket pair than it is to flop 2-pair with an offsuit hand. So yeah. Indifferent here is 5-2. So being able to make both a straight and a flush is better than just being able to make a flush. And having a 6 isn't super ideal because one of these guys is likely to have something like pocket 6s. Or 7-6, that kind of stuff. So like it makes Ace-6 suited a bit harder to make a pair. So 5-2 here is indifferent. So how would you rank these two hands? No, it should be pretty easy, right?
Yeah, I'd think the Ace-6 is higher value just because of the flush value, right?
Yeah, exactly. So 6-5 suited is a mistake. Sorry, 6-5 suited is a mistake, and 6 suited is the inaccuracy. Just being able to rank the hands like this is important, right? Right. The ranking 5-2 being slightly better than Ace-6 because of the ability to make both a straight and a flush going 4 ways. Being able to make a straight being able to make the nut straight that's not dominated is fairly good. And being able to make a flush multi-way isn't too bad either. Ace-6 suited, while it's got pretty high, it makes the nuts on the ace-high flush, which is nice, but that doesn't happen super often. Right, so it's a combination of making a flush quite often and making a straight often. So being able to make both a straight and a flush is nice.
Yeah,
so this is
I'm gonna guess that none of the other players have 7-5, so the 5 deuce makes the nuts on both ends.
Yeah, so it doesn't make it too much sense for either of the other 2 players to have 7-5.
Yeah, so we do have the nuts on both ends. Okay.
Let's just sit here. So yeah. Yeah, so 5-2 will have the nuts on both ends. Obviously, all the suited aces will always continue. I mean, these suited aces here, instead we prefer to go with a bit of the King X to cover those ranks. So the ranks are fairly well covered, like the 6X rank and the 9X ranks are fairly well covered by the other parts. And in terms of having a suited ace, like having the wheel ace in your calling ranges, is much nicer because of the ability to make both a straight and a flush. So like when we're thinking expected hand strength to some power, but a power greater than 2, that's how we're going to rank them. Alright, so it's going to be something like possibly 3, possibly 4, because it's 4 players. You've got ace 10 offsuit. They're losing 0.6 of a big blind, so 63 BB per 100 loss if you call that hand. So pretty horrible mistake there. Pretty horrible blunder there. Okay, next one. So yeah, you got to be thinking about how multi-way it is and then how to rank them. So when it goes very multi-way, the hand strengths rank fairly differently. Alright, so cutoff opens 2.5, button calls, small blind squeezes, and is on us. What's EV of continuing? So what are we thinking?
I think your queen jack suited gets dominated a lot.
So where's Queen Jack suited going to go?
Either mistake or blunder. I'm also not a fan of continuing ace 5.
This is continuing, so you don't have to call. You can re-raise.
You can raise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess ace 5 because I'd imagine ace 5 can sometimes be a raise here, so I'd guess ace 5 is indifferent. Because I can't, yeah, because I think king queen is slightly too weak to raise, because we'd just be bluffing too often if we raise the king queen, I think.
So we have a Queen Jack as a blunder.
Mm-hmm.
Tossing up between these ones, so think about which one's indifferent.
So sixes make sense as indifferent because, you know, it's the pure bluff catcher.
Yeah, pure luck catcher, right? That's indifferent there. And the accuracy and the mistake, so you guys probably ranked it already. So here, this one is the inaccuracy and this one is the mistake. So this is the ranking of hands here when continuing. So the sixes is being indifferent because it's the pure bluff catcher. Ace 5, I mean sure it can min raise to continue. Doing everything else is pretty horrible. And it can do it sometimes, but some of the other ace X is chosen instead, and then king queen and queen jack. So looking at the range here, you got sixes. A fair chunk of the pocket pairs are indifferent between calling and folding. Ace 5 loses 7 BB per 100 by going for the 50% raise. Don't have a min raise in this sim, unfortunately. Maybe if there was a min raise, it'd be closer to indifferent. King queen offsuit, yeah, a bit too weak. Offsuit hands not faring too well. The only offsuit hands that you really want to continue with is ace king and ace queen. Ace queen being indifferent. And then queen jack is pretty horrible blunder, losing 60 BB per 100 by continuing with queen jack there. Yeah, fairly easy to dominate queen jack in these squeeze spots. Alright, so small blind limps. So the small one versus the big blind spot. So small blind limps, hero raises, and then small blind 3 bets. So I'm sure this happens often for you guys.
So I'd guess freeze is a pure bluff catcher again, especially if it's against a small blind range. Or is freeze so weak that it can't even function as a bluff catcher? Yeah, I can't. I'd imagine freeze is most likely to be indifferent here, but it would be something else.
Doesn't seem that bad to call threes. Not great. So comparing it to the other one, it's not like threes is that different than sixes. And now we're in like the size, we're having to call a bigger size, but we open bigger. There's no longer the stuff in the middle, but we're in position. So threes being indifferent makes sense.
All right. Well, what else could be indifferent?
Probably the queen nine suited, because I find the offsuit combos just tend to fold a lot against the free bets, whereas suited hands, especially in position, can continue a lot more. Although
The SPR is going to be so low, though. Right? The SPR is going to be, what, 35 and then 82 and a half left behind? It's like 2.5. So, like, is the suitedness that big of a deal? Maybe Jack 10 off is the blunder, because you just get dominated by all of the stuff that he limb 3 bet.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
I think queen 9 is indifferent.
Yeah.
Why do you think queen nine is indifferent? Are you going to be calling with queen nine? Are you going to be raising with queen nine? Alright, I'll make it easy. Compare queen 9 to queen 10. You're going to be continuing with queen 10? Queen 10 suited?
Probably can continue queen 10 suited.
So which of your suited queens are you going to bluff?
Queen 9 suited.
Queen 9 suited. Alright. The other two?
Is there any merit to jamming king jack off?
Probably not. If you want to jam king jack suited, that makes a lot more sense. King jack offsuited doesn't have too much equity against the calling range compared to king jack suited. Alright, so king jack here is a mistake, and the inaccuracy in threes is the mistake. So he got queen 9 suited. So there is a combination of going for the min, this would be 4-bet, I think, min 4-bet to like 31.5 big blinds, and jamming. So like if you min it and then you get jammed on, right, you're basically saying with pocket pairs and ace king and all that. Ace is always flats. And yeah, so the combination of like queens, kings, and ace king suited, we're gonna have some other bluffs alongside that, including queen 9 suited, king 8 suited, the suited aces. There's not a lot of point in having threes. So this is what the re-raise range looks like. And threes doesn't really help, because threes just is chopping against all the bluffs. So every possible bluff in this range has got 50% equity against your threes, and set mining with it isn't super helpful either, because the amount that you're paying to set mine, you're paying 14 big blinds to set mine, so it's not super attractive compared to like 5, 6, 7, 8s, which dominate some of the bluffs at least. Which is why they're always called. So this is what the bluffing range looks like. It's got, 6, 5, that kind of crap. Ace 4, king 2, but with threes being just essentially chopping against all these bluffs, not so good. Versus like 5s, which beat some of the bluffs, which dominates 5, 4 and ace 5 and all that kind of stuff. 8s once again dominating all those bigger suited connectors and suited sevens and that kind of crap. Yeah, and Jack 10 is a pretty obvious blunder. In fact, if you continue with Jack 10, you lose like 3 big blinds. There, calling loses 2 big blinds, so 200 BB per 100 loss if you call it Jack 10 here, which is pretty huge. All right, so cutoff opens, button calls, and now it's on us in the small blind.
So there's a good possibility we're going at least 3-way, if not 4 ways. So ace 10 off does not look like it's doing too well.
Yeah, so ace 10 off is going to be what?
Mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got small positive here. So we've got 0 and small positive.
Okay.
So you've got to rank these hands. So which one do you like the best?
Set mining with 5s doesn't seem awful.
Yeah, set mining is really good, right? You call 1.5 big blinds. I mean, if the big
true.
blind overcalls, it's not too bad because that just improves our pot odds. Even though it represents a stronger range and then our position against the extra player, but set mining is pretty good. So that's a small positive. So what's indifferent? What are these two hands?
So it's tempting to think that Jack 9 is just stronger, I think. But
so remember,
Jack
we're a
9
small
could
blind
get-
or the big blind. And we don't have to continue as a call. So it can continue as a raise.
in that case, then you could continue Jack 9 suited as a raise.
Yep. Which at least this is the inaccuracy. So this is what it looks like. So a lot of pocket pairs. There's Jack 9 being indifferent between calling, raising, and folding. Ace 10 is the mistake. And the other suited aces. So the other offsuit aces are worse of a mistake than that one is. Because it's only 3-way multi-way, it's not like a huge mistake yet, and the size that you pay is only 1.5 big blinds. But like if you continue with ace 5, that's a blunder. Yeah, pocket 5s, you win a small amount by continuing. Alright, pocket 2s, you win even more. And then 5-3 suited is just a tiny mistake to continue. You can just fight it and only lose 7 BB per 100.
7.5.
7.5 BB per 100, yeah. So cutoff opens, button folds, small blind. So basically it's a cut-in versus, what am I saying? Cutoff versus small blind 4-bet scenario. So we're facing the cutoff 4-bet from the small blind.
So I think the first thing we have to consider is like, what's the min? Or what's the small 4-bet? Sorry. And I'm gonna say it doesn't have, it's very Broadway heavy. So King Jack suited is beat by a lot of stuff.
All right, so what do you think is the best out of all these hands?
Something like 5-4 suited.
Well, it's interesting, 5-4 suited and 7-6 suited.
I guess 5-4 suited makes slightly less straights when it's up against an ace. But it also gets to make some stuff from an ace hitting.
I like 7-6 because it doesn't block like the ace 5 and like ace 4, the potential bluffs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they both got roughly the same equity. I mean, 6-5 being the most, having the most equity because of the ability to make the most straights, the most nutted straights against the 4-bet range. 7-6 outranks 5-4 because of the ace-5, ace-4 hands in the bluffing range. All right, so what's the next? What do you think the worst hand is out of all these?
I mean,
5-4.
King Queen off is really bad to continue.
Yeah, so King Queen off is horrendous. So it loses to basically everything. Ace Queen's pretty heavy. Pretty heavy Ace Queen, Ace King.
So that's the mistake, not the blunder.
Sorry, you have a blunder, my bad.
All right. So like, I still think that King Jack suited like just gets beat by too much. Also. Like I know Ace 5, Ace 4 is like a little bit of bluffs, but I don't think the one blocker. Oh, it's 2 blockers. Damn.
Doesn't that make 5-4 the mistake? Because it's
Yeah.
blocking the bluffs?
It's double blocked, so that might be enough to take it too far.
Yeah, unblocking the bluffs might be, plus having the flush and the connectivity is just beats the hands that do have us like kind of dominated. Same thing with 5-4, but just 5-4 blocks less bluffs and blocks more bluffs.
Alright, so here King Jack is an inaccuracy to min 5-bet. That's so cool. So what it'll say here, so there's a min 5-bet range, which seems pretty insane. So you min 5-bet to 37 big blinds, then you fold. Here King Jack. It says King Jack is in there, but it isn't. Anyway. Yeah, you lose 0.5. So 5.5 BB per 100. Is that what that says?
How much compared to 5-4?
5-4 you lose 15 BB per 100 by calling. What else was there? There was King Queen. Yeah, King Queen is just wrecked. I mean, if you min it, yeah, it's just not good. Like against the min 5-bet, right? They're gonna be fighting a lot, trapping with aces, and so you kind of want a hand that can outdraw aces. I mean, Jacks plus an ace king suited will rip it into you. At least with King Jack, you kind of block like kings and ace king and jacks. That a big chunk of the jamming range, while also getting called by a little bit of the worse hands. Those bluffs. So if you flop a king or a jack, you can kind of check it down. And that's what we see with like King 10 suited, in particular. And King 10 suited then like unblocks ace jack offsuit, which folds, and blocks blocks the same kind of hands. Yeah. Difficult to kind of visualize. I mean, also like the King 10, you got the set of 10s there. So like aces and 10s are min 5-bet at the same kind of frequencies. Aces obviously being a bit more. Marcus, do you have push to talk?
Hmm?
Yeah, push to talk. You can like yeah, so like in the user settings, you can change voice and video to, instead of voice activity, to push to talk. And then that way you can set a button to press, and then that will you press that button and then you can talk. All right. So logic. So next question. So logic opens to. Does anyone have any questions about this one? I mean, it seems a bit weird to fold king jack and call king 10. But if you look at the kind of bluffing range, like king 10 dominates the offsuit 10s. Yeah. Maybe because it's close to min 5 bet. Sorry, min 4 bet instead of min 5 bet the king 10. It's a good wrap your head around a min 5 bet range. You got min 5 bet, and if they jam, you're basically folding everything except for aces and jacks, which ends up being the bulk of your min 5 bet range. Sorry, aces and 10s, and ace queen suited and king 10 off, because you put 37 big blinds in. To put 37 big blinds in and then fold is pretty bad. But you can do it if you know how to play post flop with an SPR of like a half. Then again, I doubt that the range is super accurate when getting close to the min 5 bet kind of stuff. So maybe if I rerun another one, it says high precision. Yeah, I'm not sure how big the post flop tree is for them. All right, so low jack opens to 3, cut off calls, and now we're in the button. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, my sound doesn't work if I use push to talk.
Oh, I mean, your sound doesn't work.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, what do you mean?
Yeah, my sound doesn't work when I use push to talk, I don't think.
Your sound doesn't work. All right, that's a bit strange.
Either way, okay, I think
Your
ace
sound
jack
doesn't
off
work.
is...
It's a bit strange for your sound not to work.
I can try again. Are you guys getting extra sound from me?
Yeah, that was the issue. All right, so what do you guys think for these ones? Right, so out of all these hands, so comparing ace jack, ace 10, jack 10, queen jack.
Yeah, it's clearly not working when I use push to talk. Yeah, I guess ace jack off is the blunder. Thomas?
Why do you think that?
So it's unsuited. First of all. And I guess one of them is likely to have something like ace queen or ace king. Putting in a lot of money not to be able to hit the nuts multi-way. I guess you could continue as a 3-bet. And if you do, you don't do well against the calls.
Yeah, I mean, you just block a bunch of folds and all that. So you block the suited jacks, which will fold. That's also good. This is the wonder. What about the rest of them?
Maybe the best thing to use to continue is queen jack. You block queens and jacks.
Yep, so queen jack's pretty good.
And then on the same line, like jack tens connected nicely. You can hit some straights and stuff. Especially on something like ace king queen.
Yep,
like
sure. So
when-
it's going to be the inaccuracy, and then that leaves
yeah.
the mistake at ace and suited. All right, so this is it here. Ace jack being a pretty horrible blunder at you lose if you pot it, you still lose half a big blind. Queen jack suited, always continuing. Alright, something continuing as a raise, something sometimes continuing as a call, continuing as a raise, you block queens and jacks. Ace queen and ace jack, which is going to be a good chunk of the continuing range for all the other two players. Cut off and low jack. Which is nice. Jackson suited can sometimes call. Sorry. If it calls it, it loses 4 bp per 100. So it's not a great call, but if you do call, it's not quite so bad because you don't quite get too, you're not too dominated by like, there's not as much 10x moves at ace 10, but ace jack, king jack and queen jack. So like continuing with them to try and make a pair isn't ideal. You really want to continue with the suited connectors that can make us straight, which is sort of why the 6-5 and the 5-4 prefer to continue. But yeah. Yeah, no, ace 10 is just a mistake. Alright, it's pretty small. I think I made this before this had been completed, but still, it's a bit more of a mistake than Jack 10 is, being dominated by a lot of the ace X in both players' ranges. But even though it is dominated by the ace X, it does dominate some of the 10x, so it isn't too bad in terms of making a 10, but it isn't ideal in making an ace, which is kind of why we see ace Jack being the weakest ace X continuing. So a combination of ace jack and queen jack. I'm sorry, ace queen and ace jack as the ace X, and king queen and king jack as the king X, and then a bit of queen jack, good queen 10 is the queen X. Right, so that's the pattern there, and then the rest of the ranks is basically just covered by the pocket pairs. Yeah, because we're trying to make top pair, right? Hijack opens to 2.5, button calls, squeeze, and we're in the big blind. So we're looking at the big blind versus the small blind squeeze against the hijack and cutoff. So hijack and button.
I think the best thing to use is king queen suited. So that'd be my different one because you block kings and queens. You at least beat king jack suited and stuff like that from the small blind.
Yeah, it was good. This is made from the old one. Anyway,
So would ace 10 be the blunder here?
gotta update these. Yeah, ace 10 is pretty obvious blunder. I mean, just loses to everything.
Yeah.
And doesn't dominate too much. Also blocks folds if we decide to take out the min 5-bet. Alright, so we got to start between ace jack and king jack. So what do you think between Ace Jack and King Jack? Which one's going to be the mistake? Which one's going to be the inaccuracy?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
So what do we want as what do we want our opponent to fold? If we were to like min 5 bet.
Hopefully, queens. Queens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if queens are going to be folding too much, but what do you think is going to be in the folding range of both hijack and small blind, right, and also button?
Ace queen.
Yeah, so it's ace queen offsuit, right? So which one of these blocks ace queen offsuit?
Ace jack.
So ace jack blocks ace queen offsuit, while king jack doesn't. King jack also blocks ace king. So king jack does better because it blocks ace king, but doesn't block ace queen. Well, ace jack blocks both of them. So king jack is actually the inaccuracy, and ace jack is the mistake. So king jack here ranks higher than ace jack. And this is it here. I did it before for the sim ran to completion, but basically you can see that both king queen and king jack are pretty similar to hands, and ace jack and ace 10 aren't quite as good. If we continue with the min raise, this is what the folding ranges look like. So we basically want this the ace queen and ace jack offsuit to be in our opponent's ranges, because there's ace queen offsuit in all three of the opponent's ranges, both the opener, the hijack, the button as the caller, and the small blind as the squeezer. So we want our opponent to have ace queen offsuit. So with the ace jack, king queen is a bit stronger than king jack, queen queen, not blocking those jack x suited hands that will fold in everyone's range. So king queen and king jack both unblock ace queen. King jack blocks a little bit of ace jack offsuit. King queen suited unblocks those weaker jack x hands that will fold. Right. Cut off opens at 2, so we're cut off. So we're facing the squeeze after small blind calls. So what do you think? So what do you think we're going to continue with against the squeeze? Before that,
Where did we open from?
we're in the cutoff. So, but between the cutoff and the small blind, who do you think is going to be continuing more often against the squeeze? Us or the small blind?
Hopefully us.
Yeah, us well a lot. We're uncapped and we're in position versus small blind is being capped and out of position. So the small blind here is going to be playing closer to back raise or fold, and we're going to have the bulk of the calling range. So knowing that, what is the idea of continuing with some of these hands?
I think sixes might be indifferent again, the bluff catcher. Okay. And then like in terms of what gets dominated, like what does the big blind dominate? He really dominates Jack 10, even though it's suited.
This is the big blind squeeze range here. So what do you think of the Jack 10? So Jack 10, it loses to the bigger ace x and bigger Jack x and 10x, but we actually do dominate some of the weaker Jack x and 10x. 10 9, Jack 9, Jack 8, 10 8, 10 7, 10 6. This wasn't too bad. So Jack 10 suit actually goes here because of the ability to make the straight and flushes and not being dominated by like ace queen. So how do we rank these two hands? Yeah.
You go back to that range that he raises. So King Jack loses to King Queen, Kings, Ace King, Ace Jack, whereas Ace 10 beats all the King 10, Queen 10, Jack 10. There's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so the Ace 10 at least beats the King 10. It beats 3 different hands, whereas the King Jack only beats 2 different hands. So I'm going to go Ace 10 is better.
Yeah, okay, so we got the inaccuracy of the mistake. Like these are actually only inaccuracies and mistakes when we're looking at the raise. So this is the range here that we continue with. So 6 is being indifferent, Jack 10 always continuing. Ace 10 offsuit, I mean, it's pretty bad to call. Both King Jack and Ace 10 are blunders to call. But in looking at the min raise, which is the other line we can take, you lose a 6 BB per 100 for Ace 10. So Ace 10 offsuit and King Jack offsuit loses 35 BB per 100. Although if it pots it, it loses 10 BB per 100. So that's the inaccuracy and the mistake there. If we basically flick it back with a 50% raise, this is what the continuing range looks like. A lot of 10x. 10x suited in the calling range. Basically all the suited broadways will be calling and all suited broadways will fold. So knowing that if we do have ace 10 offsuit, we can dominate those suited broadways which call, while we get dominated by the suited aces. So I mean it's not too bad either way with the ace 10, which is why it's only an inaccuracy to raise that. Alright, so low jack opens, we squeeze a button, and then the small blind cold 4 bets. So what are we thinking against this cold 4 bet? So low jack, we're in the button, we pot it, and the small blind cold 4 bets us to 21.
I mean, ace queen suited is just the best hand. So I think ace queen suited is like probably continue here.
What about sixes? Sixes is stronger than ace queen right now.
I think sixes is like probably the bluff catcher. So it's indifferent.
What do you think the small blind's cold 4 bet range is going to look like?
Very big pocket pairs, like probably queens plus, not even jacks. Oh, so ace queen doesn't beat jacks.
Yeah, I mean, so the cold 4 bet range is going to like be like queens plus ace king. I mean, I'll show you it here. Small blind's cold 4 bet range, queen plus ace king, and then some other crap. So against that, ace queen it's not looking so flashy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sixes does better against that range.
Yep. So how do we rank these two hands?
I think king queen double blocks.
Yeah, I think King Queen has enough really good blockers to make ace three the mistake, and King Queen the inaccuracy.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, king queen double blocking kings and queens. or ace-3 only single blocks aces. Sorry, only single blocks aces. And double blocks kings and queens, which is kind of the main thing, which makes the difference between the inaccuracy and the mistake. Yeah, this is what it looks like. These pocket pairs here. My sixes isn't really 3-bet super often, which is why it always calls. So if we look at it here, this is the sixes in the 3-bet range. So we'll kind of want to end up balancing out the number of pocket pairs that we have accordingly. And sixes also does pretty well because it dominates ace-6 on the 5-4-3-2 straight, and sixes can also make some straights up to 10. So sixes can make more straights and isn't blocked by the straights in the continuing range. Yeah, in terms of king queen, like really only thinking about clicking it back and then folding to a jam, kind of thing. So like click it back. If we click it up, we block the kings, queens, ace king, while unblocking some of those weaker hands there in the small blinds range. Versus ace-3 only blocks ace king and aces. Right, so king queen blocks a bit more. Yeah, there's ace-3. And ace-3, the EV of calling is actually a little bit higher than the EV of is it different? The EV of minning it. Anyway, hopefully I did all that right. Anyone have any questions about all that? So thinking about how to rank the hands in terms of EV now. Right. It's a little bit different than the quizzes we've done in the past, because we're looking at EV and ranking the hands according to EV rather than action. Alright, so thanks so much for going through the quiz week of April 8 with me. I will see you guys later.
All right, yeah, thanks, Thomas.